And with that, I am so pleased to welcome our next group of presenters. I'm going to start with the privilege of introducing Preethy George, who will kick off the presentation, the National Training and Technical Assistance Center for Early Serious Mental Illness, or the ESMI TTA Center, TA Center Resources and Practical Tool on Shared Decision Making. Dr. Preethy George is a Principal Research Associate at 𝐕STAT with a doctoral degree in clinical psychology and more than 20 years of experience in mental health, early intervention, and public sector behavioral health services for youth and young adults. Her work spans technical assistance, program evaluation, and the translation of clinical research to inform practice and behavioral health policy. Dr. George has played key roles on research to inform on federally funded projects, on early psychosis for the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, the National Institute of Mental Health, and the Assistant Secretary for Planning and Evaluation. These projects have involved working with early psychosis researchers, providers, advocacy groups, and service recipients and their families to advance early intervention services across the country. And she currently serves as the project director for the ESMI TTA Center. And we're so privileged to have her here today to tell us about that work and learn about some of these really exciting resources. So thank you so much, Preethy, for being here. And with that, I will turn it over to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Sam, for that really warm introduction. I really appreciate it. We're very excited to talk with all of you about SAMHSA's National Training and Technical Assistance Center for Early Serious Mental Illness, also known as the ESMI TTA Center. So in this presentation, I just want to share with you some information about the ESMI TTA Center, who we are, what we do, and what are some of the resources that we can provide. Additionally, we'd like to have a moment during our presentation to hear about any topics for training and TA that would be helpful for you. So as I go through the presentation, like Sam mentioned, if you have questions, feel free to include those in the chat, and we'll go through some of those Q&As at the end of our session. So next slide, please. Thank you. So what is the ESMI TTA Center? So this is a newly funded training and technical assistance center that is supported by the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, or SAMHSA. And essentially, the overall goal is to promote a full spectrum of effective services and supports for early serious mental illnesses. Next slide. So we will refer to this term early serious mental illness, or ESMI, throughout the presentation. So I just wanted to give you a little bit of background about what that means. So SAMHSA has a working definition of ESMI, and the definition, it's not intended to be a clinical diagnosis. Rather, it's a working definition that SAMHSA is using for programmatic purposes. So I have the definition from SAMHSA on this screen for you to see, but essentially an early serious mental illness is a mental, behavioral, or emotional condition. It meets diagnostic criteria in the DSM, and ESMI refers to the initial period of onset. The definition of ESMI is not intended to include those conditions that may be attributable to substance use conditions, intellectual or developmental conditions, or other medical conditions. But you can take a look and see how SAMHSA is sort of framing this term. Next slide, please, Sam. Okay, so the main audiences for our TA Center are the mental health block grant funded ESMI programs in states across the country, as well as the SAMHSA funded clinical high risk for psychosis grantees. We also provide information that's relevant to the public, individuals, and families. So the MHBG 10% set aside for ESMI programs, it was established by Congress and implemented by SAMHSA as a source of funding for evidence-based programming for ESMI, including first episode psychosis. So that's one area. And SAMHSA's CHRP grantees, those are grant-funded programs that SAMHSA gives out to programs who qualify, and those programs identify youth and young adults at clinical high risk for psychosis, and they provide evidence-based interventions designed to intervene at the earliest detectable stage. So those are some of our main audiences for TA. Next slide, please. And so SAMHSA's MHBG 10% set aside and the CHIRP programs, they represent a portion of the continuum of care for individuals with ESMI across the country. And SAMHSA is essentially looking to support that work that many of you are doing by providing training and technical assistance support on a variety of topics. And these could include things like public education, community outreach, screening and assessment, youth and family engagement, evidence-based, evidence-informed and promising practices, financing, and training for providers. And when we talk about providers, we want to make sure that that term is broadly defined. So that could include clinicians, but it could also include many other folks that many of you may work with, peer support specialists, supported employment education specialists, case managers, prescribers. So the term provider is very broadly defined. And additionally, the word training can include a variety of topics, not just clinically focused, but also those that are other areas or aspects of your work that are very important, training on outreach or education, engagement, etc. So next slide, please. So we have a number of different activities and objectives for the TA Center, and we'll talk more about some of these in depth in a moment, but I just wanted to highlight that, some of the main ways we want to achieve these goals that SAMHSA has set out for themselves and for us is to provide training, technical assistance consultation to multiple audiences. We'd like to identify, develop, and disseminate resources that are useful and relevant. And we also want to implement learning activities. So learning communities, trainings, meetings, expert panels. Those are sort of a range of the activities that we'll be talking about today. Next slide. Okay, so this is just a little bit about who we are. So the ESMI TTA Center has a number of different partners that help us implement TA. Like Sam mentioned, I'm located at WestStat along with some of my other partners and colleagues at the ESMI TTA Center. But we also work with other folks that are in the community and that are doing important work, including folks at On Track New York. We have partners at PEPNET at Stanford University, the National Association of State Mental Health Program Directors, or NASHPID, the NASHPID Research Institute, or NRI, and also the National Council for Mental Wellbeing. We also have consultants who are experts in the field who help provide assistance on a variety of tasks and topics for the center. Next slide. So what I'd like to do in the presentation is tell you a little bit about the services and the activities that we have in these areas of resource development, dissemination, training and technical assistance, and collecting program level information. Next slide. So one of the things that we'd like to do as part of our project for training and TA is to provide virtual learning communities for different audiences. So as part of the work that we're doing this year, we have 3 ongoing learning communities that are in progress at this moment. We want the learning communities that we have as part of the center to be a resource. So people can walk away from the meetings with information they can use and strategies they can implement in their work. But in addition to that, we want the learning communities to be a time and a venue for people that are in similar roles to come together, learn from one another, and support one another. So the learning communities that we have now are going on this year, are ongoing. One is for team leads of ESMI teams, including first episode psychosis teams. That learning community is being facilitated by Kate Hardy and Stephen Adelsheim from Stanford University's PEPNET. We have another learning community for supported employment and supported education specialists. That one is facilitated by Gary and Tom from On Track New York. And we also have a learning community for peer support specialists, and that is facilitated by Shannon Pagdon from PEPNET, whom you'll hear from in just a little bit, as well as Sasha Altman-Jabrul. And we are really enjoying these learning communities and hearing about people's experiences and seeing how there's group shared learning. So we're very thrilled about that. And we will have additional learning communities next year. So starting in September of 2024, we'll start our second year. We'll have new learning communities at that time, and we'll promote those through SAMHSA channels, our partners' dissemination channels, our own dissemination vehicles. So please keep an eye out for those, and we'd love to have you join. So next slide, please. Another aspect of our project is we provide individual technical assistance. And the two groups where we focus that TA for customized TA is for mental health block grant funded programs and states, as well as SAMHSA funded clinical high risk for psychosis grantees. So we have a team of experts who help address a variety of different questions. So if you fall into either of those two groups and you have a question that you're struggling with in your work or an issue that you'd like to learn more about, you can use that QR code that's listed there. There's also a link on this slide as a way to request TA. So we ask that any members who are CHRP grantees funded by SAMHSA, that you discuss any request for TA with your project director. Similarly, if there's a MHBG funded program that wants to have a TA, has a TA need, that you discuss that with your state planner about the request. That's only because we want folks to have a clear understanding of the TA needs and so that we can help coordinate that best. So essentially, if you have a TA request, you have a TA need, and you use that code, the QR code, what will happen is that you will see a form. It takes you to a form that you will fill out and that request TA. Once we get the form, we reach out and we work with you to develop a customized TA plan that's based on your needs. And then we submit those requests to SAMHSA for approval. And if approved, then we work with you on implementing that plan. And this is at no cost to people requesting TA. It's something that SAMHSA is providing as a service to all of you. Next slide, please. So, in just generally speaking, when you think about the TA topics that people may request, these are just some examples of some of the TA topics we've been asked to address so far. Things related to financing, outreach, including school collaboration and screening, trauma-informed care, trauma treatment, connecting clinical high risk for psychosis treatment across systems of care, treatment that's specific, like training on specific areas of treatment, assessment of clinical high risk for psychosis. But there are other topics and certainly others that we could address. So those are just examples for you to just see. All right, next slide. Okay, so we wanted to pause here. So we did have a poll question. I don't know if that comes up here. Yeah, great. So we wanted to pause here and ask a poll question. The question here, since we're talking about topics for TA, we thought we could just pose this to you. The question is, are there topics or training or technical assistance topics that could help you? And there are some options that are listed here. And thank you, Sam, for pulling that up. So please feel free to select any of these or multiple options. That's totally fine. If there are topics that are not on this list, feel free to include those in the chat. That would be great. So I'll give you a moment to just fill out anything that comes to mind that would be useful for you. What do you think, Sam? Do we need to spend a little more time on it, or do you think we can close it? Oh, I see a lot of topics in the chat. This is amazing. So helpful. Oh, this is great. Peer support. I'm seeing a bunch of different things. Family engagement, evidence-based treatment. This is really great. Informed treatment. Thank you so much for sharing these topics with us. Family involvement. Excellent. Family peer advocacy, cultural considerations, transitions from CAC, use of telehealth. These are fantastic. Thank you so much. Implementation of technology tools for scalability, provider bias, misdiagnosis, Neurodiversity affirming practice, duty to warn without damaging relationships. This is fantastic. Thank you all so much for your responses. This is helpful for us. And it's helpful, I think, for SAMHSA to see what areas of need are sort of raised to the surface. So thank you so much for this. Okay, if there's other ones, feel free to add those to the chat. We'll have a record of all of those pieces. Okay, I think maybe we can move to the next one, Sam. Great. Okay, so one of the other aspects of the project is developing resources, and product development is one of the things that we are working on. Here are some examples of possible topics that the center can develop. All of the product development tasks that we do, it's all with the goal of providing information that is useful and relevant. So for this year, these are some of the topics that we're in the process of moving through the SAMHSA approval process, but we can develop content on areas like addressing disparities and inequities in coordinated specialty care, or CSC. We are looking at doing a comparison of different CSC models and an overview and comparison of those models. Crisis services and ESMI is a possible topic. Developmentally appropriate shared decision-making tools. We have a resource document that we're developing that is about the HCPCS codes. So the healthcare common procedures coding system, the CMS codes for billing for CSC. Also, we're working on some data analysis to look at some results from the first cohort of clinical high risk for psychosis grantees and the data they submitted to SAMHSA. So we're looking at information from that as well. And so as our TA Centers develops and as we move forward, there'll be other resources that we develop as part of the project, either as products or other types of resources that would be useful. Okay, next slide. Okay, so we have a newsletter that you can sign up for. As I mentioned, one of the things we'd like to do is disseminate resources in addition to developing them as well. So the QR code there is a way that you can sign up for the newsletter. SAMHSA approves our newsletter, which includes updates on upcoming events and trainings and webinars and courses and other things that are relevant to your work. So please feel free to sign up for that. Also, on the other hand, if there are events related to your program or related to your work that you would like to publicize and make more widely known, please let us know. Our email address is on these slides. It's ESMI TTA Center at westat.com. We would love to hear about events that you would like to see disseminated more broadly as they pertain to early psychosis or other early serious mental illnesses. So that is, we'd love to hear about those as well. So please feel free to share those with us. Next slide. In addition, we have a website for the ESMI TTA Center. The URL is there. It's on the SAMHSA page, samhsa.gov/ESMI TTA Center. There's some hyphens in there, but the URL is on the page. And basically, the page includes a link to some of the things we've just discussed, things like the newsletter and also how to request TA. But it also has resources that are currently publicly available, and it includes resources in these broad areas. So community outreach and education, screening and assessment, treatment supports and services, financing resources, and other areas. So we update these resources periodically and on a regular basis because we want to keep these resources more current. And so if you are interested, take a look and check out any resources that might be relevant to you and your work or folks that you're working with. Next slide. Thanks. All right, so another piece that we're doing is understanding more about programs and more about program level information as well. So we are going to be reaching out to states and territories to gather information about ESMI programs that are funded through the mental health block grant set aside. We'd like to do that so we can learn more about the range of programs that are out there, the services that they offer, populations they serve. We'll be writing up a snapshot report about that and learning more about programmatic level information at the state level to sort of further our understanding of what available services are out there. Next slide. And another piece, SAMHSA currently has and maintains a treatment locator on their website. And these are programs funded by the Mental Health Block Grant Set Aside that provide services for early serious mental illnesses. So we have been reaching out to states to find out if there are additional programs that should be listed on SAMHSA's website on the treatment locator. This QR code will take you to the website where that treatment locator exists. And so we'll be working with SAMHSA to update the list. I think it's been a couple of years since the treatment locator was updated. I think it was 2022. So we have some additional programs that we have learned about that we are going to work with SAMHSA to update that list. So that's another resource that you can use to find programs that are across the country and that could be in your area. Next slide. So those are the resources that are available as part of the ESMI TTA Center. We want to we want the center as we grow to be responsive and helpful for you. And as we continue to grow, we want to collaborate with you and all the amazing work that you're doing to advance effective early intervention services. We'd like to make sure that we capture and collaborate with you as you do your amazing work. Next slide. Okay, great. Well, thank you so much. Our website and email is listed here if you have any additional questions. Thank you so much for all of the responses in the chat and on the poll. And thank you again. So I think now I'd like to introduce two of my colleagues who also work with me as part of the ESMI TTA Center. And they're going to talk to you about shared decision-making, a topic that we thought would be very relevant to many of you, as well as an area of resource development for the center. So we are so thrilled and honored to have Shannon Pagdon and Apurva Bhatt here with us today to present with me. So Shannon Pagdon is a joint master's doctoral student at the University of Pittsburgh School of Social Work. She earned her bachelor's of arts in forensic psychology at John Jay College of Criminal Justice, and she's a former research coordinator for EpiNet New York State Psychiatric Institute. Shannon also does ongoing work for the 𝐓𝐫𝐾𝐲 network. She is someone with lived experience of psychosis and has a background in peer support. She is the co-creator of Psychosis Outside the Box, and she's currently serving as the Vice President of Lived Experience Research within IEPA. So within her graduate programs, she's studying under Dr. Nev Jones, and she's currently focusing on a qualitative in-depth examination into peer support nationwide. So thank you so much, Shannon, for joining us. And also we're thrilled that Apurva Bhatt is going to be here. So Apurva Bhatt is a child, adolescent, adult psychiatrist and clinical assistant professor at Stanford University School of Medicine. Her role spans the General Adult Psychiatry Division, the Child Psychiatry Division, and the Center for Youth and Mental Health and Wellbeing Division. Dr. Bhatt specializes in early psychosis evaluation and treatment, and she currently provides clinical care in both the Lucile Packard Children's Hospital Child Inspire Early Psychosis Clinic, as well as the Stanford Healthcare Inspire Clinic. She contributes to early psychosis program development in California through 𝐓𝐫𝐾𝐲 and now nationally through PEPNET and with WestApp. She is also co-chair of the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry, Adolescent Psychiatry Committee, and Early Psychosis Work Group. So I'll turn it over to Shannon and Apurva.
Thanks, Preethy. So we can go to the next slide. Shannon and I wanted to start with a poll. Have you heard of shared decision-making? And we can, I don't know if it, oh, there we go. It launches as a nice pop-up. So we'll just take a couple seconds. We wanted to kind of get a sense of how many folks are aware of this or know about what this is. And I think probably that's enough time to yes or no. Maybe we can close it and kind of see where things are at. Okay, awesome. So, oh, Oh yeah. Okay. So wonderful. 73% are aware. Wonderful. Awesome. This is really great to hear. We're really excited to talk to you all about developmentally appropriate shared decision making. Next slide, please. And I'm going to pass it on to Shannon.
Yeah, just to echo that, Apurva, really excited to be here presenting to you all. I have kind of experienced shared decision making in the past that kind of wasn't really shared decision making, so I'm very passionate and kind of interested to shift that experience for other people that are in these types of programs, and really excited to just talk to you more about it. Next slide, please. So we wanted to give you just an introduction to shared decision making. It is a collaborative process where the individual works together with their healthcare provider to make the most informed decision about their own treatment or care options. And I do just want to say that to me, this also means kind of listening to what is causing the person distress and what they might want to focus on or not focus on in shared decision making. And we also are kind of referring to not only the individual and the healthcare provider, but anybody that they might want kind of supporting them in that space. So kind of just to expand that language a little bit. And it does offer a framework intended to support the goals and preserve the dignity of the individual. Studies show that shared decision making can lead to increased levels of satisfaction, quality of life for folks, and also provide support around treatments, and a sense that they are respected as an active decision maker and an agent of change into their own lives. We're going to speak a little bit more to that autonomy piece in a bit. And shared decision making is also really feasible intervention during kind of first episode psychosis appointments, and it does not extend the normal conventional appointment length that folks are kind of used to. Next slide, please.
And so as a child psychiatrist, I recognize it's really important to be thinking about how do we prepare young people as they grow up and become adults and become legal decision makers in their own care. And so it's really important to create a positive first experience for individuals as it relates to healthcare decisions. And it's really important to ensure that youth, especially and individuals, have an active voice in their healthcare decisions, and youth, especially minors, over time are empowered to make healthcare decisions. It's really important to think about how families should support their children in having these positive experiences in healthcare decision making, and really should consider employing this early to promote a transition to adulthood. And so this kind of takes the form of a process that shifts the responsibility of decision making to the youth over time as they grow, and offers them opportunities to develop these important skills related to decision making. And that includes knowing what questions to ask and learning how to advocate for their care. Next slide, please. And so what is shared decision making? So for the small percentage of you who were not familiar with this, so shared decision making involves 3 steps. The first step is at the top, which is called team talk. And in that step, the healthcare provider articulates that there is a choice to be made and collaborates with the individual and their identified support persons to participate in the decision-making process. And so there's a variety of ways you can open up that conversation, saying, hey, we have a decision to make, and I'd like to work together as a team to think about what option might work best for you and your goals. It is also important to ask the individual if they want additional decision makers to be part of that discussion, and then explicitly inviting those individuals to participate, keeping in mind minor consent and confidentiality laws. The second step of shared decision making is option talk. And that's when the healthcare provider lays out what the options are, including the risks and benefits of each option, including doing nothing. And after each option, they would offer the opportunity to ask questions before proceeding to explaining the next option. When you are describing these things, it's really important to use developmentally appropriate language, taking into account that young person's age and cognitive stage of development, and those kinds of things. In the third step, that's the decision talk. That's where the healthcare provider and the individual and/or their identified support persons or family members, parents, They discuss the options in a very collaborative manner and make a decision based on the individual's preferences or goals. And it's really important to think about what matters most to that person as they're considering the decision. And so there are things, and in that decision talk, there might be an opportunity to think about, is there anything else that you might be able to explain or expand upon regarding the options? And then collaboratively, a decision is made. Next slide, please. So there are some additional considerations when we're thinking about shared decision-making in a developmental context. So like I mentioned in the team talk, we have to think about legal considerations, the age of legal consent, who is able to participate in these decisions, taking into account HIPAA and FERPA laws. In the option talk stage, I mentioned using age-appropriate language and also plain language, thinking about using visual aids or shared decision-making worksheets or tools, which is something we're really excited to be working on through the ESMI TTA Center. We want to ensure that the young person understands the options and help answer questions. And I want to mention that though parents or legal guardians of young people provide legal consent for treatment, most of the time, the ultimate choice of whether that young person is going to participate in treatment or that minor is going to participate in treatment really lies with them. And so it really behooves the healthcare provider to use shared decision-making and involve them in the decision-making process. And I'll pass it to Shannon to add a little bit more.
Yeah, I agree. And I know that, we had a question in the chat around whether folks can kind of participate in shared decision making when they're kind of actively experiencing symptoms. And I would say that, at any kind of stage in one's experiences, they definitely can participate in shared decision making. This is something that, like Apurva was speaking to, can kind of be done at any part of the process. So yeah, we just want to encourage folks to kind of keep these things in mind moving forward, but I did want to address that question.
Thank you so much, Shannon. Thank you so much, Shannon, for addressing that question. Unfortunately, I do have to, I'm here with bad news of a time warning. I am so sorry. I hate, because we could talk so much. But can I give a 1-minute time warning so we have our next presenter here? I'm so sorry. We would love to share all of your resources in the chat too, because we didn't get through everything.
Yeah, we're actually almost done. So we'll wrap it up. Yeah, we can go to the next slide. And so just a couple of last things, there are some developmental considerations. Young people may still be developing their identity, and it's important to recognize how being diagnosed with some sort of chronic illness and receiving treatment can impact their sense of self and identity. It's also important to recognize that during adolescence, young people are going to be seeking autonomy and independence, and that should be supported and considered typical adolescent development. And maybe we can go to the next slide in the interest of time. So we can end maybe with this poll. So we would love to know what additional information folks would like to learn about regarding shared decision making, and really want to thank folks for your time and being able to share more information about this topic. We really do value your input and feedback. I think we can probably close the poll if needed.
Thank you so much for that. One's actually in the chat box versus.
Oh, it's in the chat. Okay.
Response. So, but we're seeing I think some chats come in, how to have family buy-in, more examples in curriculum itself.
Thank you so much.